Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about the smoking gun in the John F. Kennedy assassination. You know, we are reaching the 53rd anniversary, and there's an aspect of the Kennedy assassination and its aftermath that is very, very important and very rarely talked about or documented. And that is that we know the story of the Kennedy assassination. We know on November 22nd, 1963, John F. Kennedy was gunned down in a motorcade. Most probably done in the way of a coup d'etat. There was something very, very nefarious going on with all of that. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. The Kennedy assassination took place. He was brought to Parkland Hospital. They observed the body. He was alive when he reached Parkland Hospital. In theory, he was dead already, but his body was still showing signs of life, breathing, heart rate, minimal blood pressure, etc. Probably within about a half an hour he had flatlined. Then the body was prepared, wrapped up, and put in an ornamental bronze casket. Now this is the important part that's very important to look at here, because I find it so incredible that after the fact that people don't think about this or don't discuss it. Kennedy's body is brought to Air Force One. There is discussion amongst many conspiracies. Now there's the problem. The problem with conspiracy is there could be kernels of truth. There's so much going on that no one's really quite sure totally of all the truth. And that's the difficult part. His body may have been delivered to Bethesda Medical Center in that bronze casket. It may not have. It may have arrived in a shipping casket. The autopsy took place. Photographs were taken. X-rays were done. Examinations were made. In the way of an autopsy, it was somewhat bad. There was not a high degree of professionalism in many respects. Many things were not listed. There's a lot of questions about the brain. It was never weighed. No one knew how much of the brain was left. Of course, there was also two brains, which is also a problem as well. Now let's go on to this in many other ways. Let's go to the next part of this scenario. Kennedy's body is examined. His body is put back together as best it could. He is laid out in a casket. Everyone looks at him and says, doesn't even look like him. Well, he was pretty banged up. They refused to have an open casket, so it was closed. Mrs. Kennedy took hair samples. Snip, 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 as her Secret Service agent said. And then he would be buried. He would be buried in a Wilbur vault. Now, just so you know what a Wilbur vault is, the casket is placed upon or into this very large vault that is airtight. It is sealed, and then it is buried in that. It protects the casket for ages. In 1967, JFK's Wilbur vault was exhumed, and he was moved to his present location. This was done at night, without press. Some of the family were there. And he would be put into the vault in which he rests. Now, the Wilbur vault was placed within the cement enclosure. He's entombed now. He's not buried. It's just a fact. underneath that massive memorial in Arlington. Now, after the assassination, after the burial, after the reburial, everything was done and over with. But there was one major problem, and that was in the National Archives had been put that ornamental bronze casket. In the National Archives was a locker which was under the control of Robert Kennedy and John F. Kennedy's personal secretary. Her name was Evelyn Lincoln. They were the only two that had keys to the large container that contained all the slides, the brain, the casket, photographs, x-rays, all kinds of things. There is a story that goes around that in 1967, Robert Kennedy buried the brain at Arlington with his brother. I don't have anything that says that as being true, because there's a big, big problem. And that is, in 1966, the previous year to exhuming John F. Kennedy, the ornamental casket was removed from its locker. It was placed in a crate, hauled, and taken out by the military to the North Atlantic, dropped, and sunk in one of the deepest areas of the North Atlantic. Now, why would that be done? Well, Robert Kennedy said that he wanted to get rid of that casket so it did not become a macabre souvenir of the assassination. It's interesting to note that there was an inventory done at the end of 1966, and practically everything was missing from that vault. There was no brain. There were no tissue slides. Photographs. Nothing. Most of it all gone. There were a few things, yes, but nothing that could connect to the body. So I want to show something to you and share something with you that doesn't get talked about. That I believe, since the only people that had keys, at least in a level there was another set of keys with the National Archives in case of an emergency, were Robert Kennedy and Evelyn Lincoln. It is my belief that in an effort to protect his brother, Robert Kennedy took everything that could connect with the body and put it in that ornamental casket. He took away anything that could raise any controversy. You have to remember, John F. Kennedy was somewhat of an image that was not really a true image. He was not as healthy as he gave off. He had several diseases. He had Addison's disease. He had a lot of back trouble. He was on lots of drugs. There are no tissue samples. There's nothing. Therefore, I believe that Robert Kennedy took everything, put it in that casket, and had it sunk. In fact, that's where the rest of John F. Kennedy's body is, at the bottom of the North Atlantic. It doesn't matter now, within just an hour or two, it would all be gone after going into the North Atlantic. This part of the history is never ever talked about, and it should, because in the effort to protect his brother, he added fuel to the fire of conspiracy. There are so many different avenues of conspiracy. There are several people all trying to cover their ass in so many different ways that it has left an absolute landmine of absolute confusion dealing with the Kennedy assassination. I don't think we will ever know everything about it. But I will say this. I am pretty sure I know where the rest of John F. Kennedy's body is. I know where the brain is. I know where most of those photographs went. I know where many of the tissue samples went. To the bottom of the North Atlantic. And the questions on Kennedy. The problems dealing with the autopsy, with the assassination itself, will never totally be put to rest because the evidence no longer exists. There are a few pictures. There are some x-rays. There are a lot of questions whether they're actually the pictures or replacements. But it's a problem. And I think it should be looked at more and talked about more, because no one's ever talking about that other casket much. And I think that that is one of the Rosetta Stones of the Kennedy assassination that never gets talked about, and certainly should, because what was in that casket were many of the answers that could have answered what we question today about the Kennedy assassination. Long time ago it was done. It's been 53 years since Kennedy was shot. Some of us still remember it. And no one ever talked about getting rid of that other casket. One of those little secrets that's always missing in the history of the Kennedy assassination. Thank you very much.